Hello, everyone. My name is Vlatko. I'm the lead contributor of Earn.Games. Amongst other things, also a member of Global DAO Alliance, in full discretion. And today we're going to talk and discuss about safe and responsible investment in blockchain. I'd like to take a moment so that our panelists introduce themselves, and then we can continue. Jonas, please.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Jonas. I'm the CEO of Athena Intelligence. It's Switzerland's largest private investigation firm. I have been doing financial investigation for the last 10 years. And last year, we have started a litigation finance company on the blockchain. We are suing Binance for $150 million as part of it because we want to push more responsibility and accountability in the crypto world. And this year, we have started Crypto Aegis, which is a due diligence and cybersecurity firm that is focusing on reducing risk for everybody that wants to invest in anything that is blockchain related.
Gary?
Yeah. Hi, guys. So I'm a contributor of TrueSight DAO and also part of the Global DAO Alliance. So what I'm really focused on right now is on governance models and behavioral models to help DAOs work and getting members aligned with the mission, vision, and values of DAOs.
Yeah. Thank you, Vit.
My name is Vit Jedlicka, and I'm the founder of Liberland. That's the first, I would say, blockchain country. We're the first to adopt cryptocurrencies as a main reserve currency. We're now building, and that's, I think, where we have a lot to discuss, the whole governance of Liberland on blockchain. You can also see our Metaverse. We're doing that with Zaha Hadid, one of the more respected architectural studios in the world. And it's really great to be here because there are so many overlaps with people that are here. And what we're doing is a real country. It's not a Metaverse country. The country is 2 hours away from here by car. And I would love to invite you later for the festival there in the summer in August.
Thank you, Vit. It's a great pleasure to have you on this panel and looking forward to our discussions. Srećko.
Thank you. My name is Srećko Miodragović. I work for a company Comtrade. Actually, company is located in neighborhood 400 meters from this venue. We are celebrating 30 years of existence, so it's a long term of good business. Comtrade has currently more than 4,000 employees in 17 countries and is involved in a lot of IT projects in the region, in Western Europe and US, also including, of course, blockchain technologies. I'm acting in the company in 2 roles. One is the advisor to the president of the company, and second, my favorite role is actually, responsibility is for our education business vertical on VP position. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Now I'd like to turn to the audience. It seems like we're coming to a wrap with the TOMORROW conference. What a great experience to be involved in these past 3 days. And I hope you guys are enjoying yourself. And I want to ask just a general question. Have you guys learned anything in the past 3 days? Have your convictions been changed, or at least are you contemplating them? Yay or nay? Yay! So, when Zoran asked me to participate in the TOMORROW conference, I was extremely happy. First of all, because I'm from the Balkans, and it is my corner of the world. And I'm very happy that it's actually happening in Belgrade because it's the capital of a romantic past. But since we're discussing the future and TOMORROW conference is all about the future, I'm also honored to be dwelling on these frontier discussions. I have another 2 questions for you guys, and then we'll get to them. They're not that important. I know most of them already. So how many of you guys are working in traditional finance, if you can just raise your hand? All right, so that's quite a handful. And how many of you are working full-time in crypto, whether it is development, investing? And how many of you are marketeers? None of you guys, okay, that's good. Great. So not so many marketeers. There is actually, guys, a position for you, but we'll talk about that maybe later. So to start with, I have two questions to all of you guys, and I would like to start with Gary.
Yeah.
Firstly, welcome to Serbia for the second time. It seems to me that you're becoming local, actually.
Yeah.
What are your motivations? This is a question for all of you guys. What are your motivations to wake up in the morning and work on such complex frontier issues? And the second question is, how do we all get involved in your projects and strengthen the credibility of the crypto space? I'd like to start with Gary.
So what actually drives me and gets me really interested in what I'm doing? Actually, it's like a whole process of discovery, right? It's like, you guys saw this movie Forrest Gump? Where the mom the mom tells Forrest Gump, life is like a box of chocolate, right? You don't really know what you're getting into until you open that box of chocolate. For me, it's literally, that's the experience I've been having ever since working in the DAO. And then in terms of I would say trust and credibility, what TrueSight DAO is trying to do is the vision of TrueSight DAO is a universal credibility protocol, right? That allows subject matter experts to establish themselves on blockchain. So it literally ties into that subject you just raised.
Very cool. Jonas?
Well, I think for me, I'm a true believer of the blockchain technology as such, and I think if we are to see mass adoption, which is everything that we talk about, we need to improve a little bit the safety of how things are done at the moment. And I think there is a lot of aspects from the old traditional finance that could translate very well in the blockchain world, and I think that's what really motivates me to make it happen. And I think the blockchain revolution is underway, but it has to be better structured if we are to convince everybody to join in and to participate.
Vit?
I think with me it comes really down to the childhood, and I was deciding what to do, what will be the most beneficial way to spend my life with, and I was always thinking that actually fixing the way we are governing our countries is probably the biggest task, because there is so much wrong things going on. I mean, it's wars, over-taxation, over-regulation, and I was trying to fix it with an existing framework, but when I realized that you cannot do much from inside, it's always much better to start something new. I decided to start Liberland, and it was around the same time Bitcoin started to be popular, decentralization started to be popular, and I thought this is actually a great opportunity to utilize these technologies to build the freest country in the world, so that was my main motivation.
Excellent. Srećko?
Thank you. Definitely my motivation when I wake up in the morning is my family, my daughter and wife, on the first place, always. And on the second, my lovely colleagues in the company, especially young people. I'd like to work with them to expand their ideas. When I came to the company more than 20 years ago, I was younger, of course, but now huge brain power actually we have in the young students. And I like to help them from the manager position to their idea became true. That is the motivation. Regarding when I involved in the blockchain space, it happened 7 years ago, roughly. When I conclude what blockchain can give us and how huge all this revolution will be, I continue to research and learn, and I'm still, of course, in learning process, and definitely I will be, like others, the lifetime student, if you talk about the blockchain technologies. And after some experience and knowledge, I start to advise inside of the company how to adapt to all this, and of course, start advising the external companies how to be involved in some of the sub-fields of blockchain.
Thank you very much. So again, I would like to turn to you guys and ask you one question. How many of you guys are invested in Luna, or were invested, or I don't know what's happened? Raise hands.
There should be a
Great, me too. I was invested in Luna as well. And if I knew these guys, you too, yeah.
I bought it.
2 days ago.
Yeah, so you're modeling. Very good.
Because of you.
So I guess if I spoke to them prior to investing in Luna, I might have actually protected my wealth or whatever. It's kind of like a BitConnect story back in the early days of ICOs, 2015. I think Vit, you are aware and familiar of those days. I would like to ask Jonas, because he's expert in the field and has worked with many institutional clients on the side of due diligence and compliance. I'd like to ask him personally, what is his opinion about safe investing? And what are the tools you use personally and in your set of companies when dealing with investments and advice? What do you recommend to investors when they have decided to invest in Web 3.0?
I think it depends how you define safe investing. Is it safe in the sense that I will, it will go to the moon and I will make a lot of money? I think nobody knows. That is the truth, and you should never believe someone that tells you this will moon for sure, because nobody knows. Is it safe, i.e. will your money be stolen by people or organization? I think that's a totally different debate, and this is something we can control. Zero risk doesn't exist, and with every investment there are risks, but I think we can get very close to the zero risk with a set of tools and procedures that would be very easy to put in place. I think if we consider safe investment in trying to reduce the risk that we can control, that is the team risk. Is the team going to go to the Bahamas for 2 weeks with the money that I give them? Or will they actually build what they are promising to build? Is the smart contract safe? Is there an exploit that can be abused? And then the last pillar of risk that we see is cybersecurity. How safe is the private key that is being used to manage the money of the project that you invest in? And I think these three risks can be somehow controlled to some extent if you are doing what we call due diligence. And I think as part of the entire due diligence tools that exist out there, the first one is it's actually not really a tool, but it's a mindset. It's good to trust people in the blockchain space, but it's even better to verify. Verify what people tell you, verify what the marketers and the influencer tell you, and verify what the team of the project is telling you. And today with the internet, it's fairly easy to verify, if somebody was indeed involved with a previous project. If someone comes and say, yes, I worked at Google for 10 years, it would be very easy to verify from a due diligence perspective.
Thank you, John. Vit, I have a question for you. I know you're one of the pioneers in the space, and you're working on very interesting niche, which to me personally is brave, bold, and exploratory-like. Are we ready to give back sovereignty to the people? It's a sort of a general question, but it also ties to the whole concept of credibility and compliance and digital identities. I guess once we are ready to shift into that, bringing back sovereignty to the people, then we can move to more complex tools like what TrueSight DAO, for example, is doing. What is the landscape, both legally and through, let's say, the communities on that particular topic?
Well, I'm kind of new country maximalist in the sense that I believe everybody should sort of have his own country. And of course, Bitcoin is allowing that. Basically, everybody has full jurisdiction over his own funds. He can store it in his head. So I truly believe that we should have more countries, and that's what we're trying to also inspire other movements similar to Liberland to basically take over a bit of a space and try to compete with the existing countries. That's one of our missions. And regarding the risk management, we decided to go 80% in Bitcoin at the very beginning of Liberland in the reserves, 20% in altcoins, and we are like 1% minus into fiat. So that's my diversification of assets. We hold a little bit of depth in euros and in dollars, just to be sure when it all crashes down, we actually don't have a problem.
So you're not invested in Luna?
No.
Okay. I am a hodler type of person, so I hope it comes back. A follow-up question. As you are a pioneer, you're also one of the few people that I know that is working on the same project since you've kind of like entered into space. And you're dealing with regulators the whole time. I assume out of here, you, Srećko, and Jonas are actually in touch with them quite often. But on your particular case, how do regulators perceive you in terms of you going against those standards of kind of governance, legal, let's say, laws and regulations. What is the response from their side on bringing back, let's say, sovereignty, digital identities, and creating something that is outside of their scope of...
Liberland is special in the sense that it's creating its own regulation. And so we are not in jurisdiction of any other country. Liberland was not formed on the territory of any other existing state. So from that perspective, our goal was always to create as little regulation as possible. Best is no regulation for many fields. And you can see it, for example, Serbia here, they've created regulation on cryptocurrencies, but the regulation is a bit difficult to deal with, so you cannot really pay with crypto here in Serbia. So I think it's a good example where basically no regulation is better than any regulation, which I would say applies generally. It's my advice to other country leaders: don't regulate cryptocurrencies.
Okay. So you make an interesting point there, and since I've been living in Switzerland, and also Jonas is from Switzerland, we have a very interesting sandbox over there, a sandbox environment. It's called self-regulated entities and environments. And a follow-up question is to Jonas, in his experience with dealing with regulators. What is their insight on how to protect the investors, particularly the retail investors, which are, let's say, missing that information in order to make a justified investment decision?
I think I disagree a little bit with what you said, Vit, in the sense that some regulation, I think, can be beneficial to people. Perhaps cryptocurrency as such should not and cannot be regulated, because who are you going to call if you want to regulate Bitcoin? Just no one on the other line. But what should be regulated is the organization that are receiving third-party money, and especially retail investor. I'm talking about exchanges, investment firms. There needs to be recourse and access to justice for people that are using these services to store their cryptocurrency or their money online. And I think, Switzerland, as you mentioned, is a good example. They have a very, I would say, progressive crypto and blockchain legislation in place, and it's a great sandbox. And I think we will see in the next, perhaps 2 years, how those regulations and those laws are coming into practice when there are problems. And for example, if the Luna case had happened in Switzerland, if Luna was a Swiss-based company, I think it would have been a great example or a case that could be the first big one for the Swiss authorities to take a look at from that perspective.
Thank you. Thank you, Jonas.
Let me just disagree a little bit with you. I think we're just basically slowing down the development, and we're turning, of course, to the age of trustless DeFi. And if you're trying to regulate it, we're basically just slowing the progress, trying to fix which has been generally broken. We really need to remove the human element from the way we are banking, from the way we are running DeFi, etc. So when you have human element, or you have wrong algorithms to run things, they're going to break. And if you're trying to fix it from a regulatory perspective, you're just prolonging the time until we have this new, nice, decentralized world.
Yeah, you make a fair point there. I think regulation personally hinders development at a pace we would expect. But then on the other hand, you have all the marketing, advertisement, and PR pushes from startups and companies, which are thousands now in the space. And again, now the question is, how do we protect the retail investor from making a justified investment decision? Regulation, in terms of where we come from, sure, we might not perceive it as a good thing for us, but at the end of the day, we're doing all of these efforts for somebody else, a client, an investor, to gain exposure and safely invest in the space.
Well, I really believe future doesn't need regulators. Of course, we need to have a justice system, and the countries should be able to prosecute people that are defrauding other people or that are committing criminal acts. But just like Bitcoin doesn't need regulation, the future of DeFi doesn't need regulation. Future of DAOs doesn't need regulation. It's all going to basically be running itself on a trustless platforms.
Mm-hmm. To move a little bit more into the regulatory environment, Srećko, you come from the local ecosystem here, and you've been heavily involved in the drafting the legislation and advising the government. I've read the legislation, actually, and to me, it's a step further to what actually Switzerland has, because it dwells very deep on KYC and insider trading information, and how we protect the information flow to investors in order for them to make a justified again, justifies the investment. What is the Serbian government doing in terms of protecting retail investors in the long run?
Yeah. Regulation in Serbia is done in June last year. Law who covered digital assets done by great job of National Bank of Serbia and Securities Commission. Great job. Why? Because it's not expected from the community that government will so easy establish this type of law. And we are lucky because of that. Of course, regulation is not with all and 100% good things. In the legislation, it's some bad. One of them is the banks in Serbia is forbidden to have a contact with crypto. Only one service can use regarding this law. That is the custody service for their existing customers. The second bad thing is that merchants, actually retailers, cannot accept the crypto when buyer want to pay some goods and services to them in crypto. But in the future, very soon, we expecting that some of the middle players will be licensed by the National Bank of Serbia and will start the business of some kind of atomic exchange office. Middle player between the buyer and the merchant. Buyer will actually pay crypto to the licensed the exchange office. Exchange office automatically will transfer that in local dinars. Only one currency officially for paying in Serbia, and middle player will play merchant for that good. Also, community knows that this type of law will in the future have a lot of updates. One of the drafts already prepared, probably awaiting the establishing the new government, because elections in Serbia finished 1.5 months ago, and expectation is that new government will be established in probably, I don't know, August and September. It is related and 100% detailed, defined tokenization field. Huge opportunity for a lot of startups in Serbia, huge opportunity for future abroad investors who will come in Serbia and actually establish the new company. About the collecting money with tokens. I personally believe that our government will actually, with help on that updated law, use opportunity to tokenize one of the huge government properties. For example, after that update, government will have opportunity to tokenize the highway, one of our highways. Serbia can be the first country worldwide, and Serbian government have opportunity to become first government worldwide who are tokenized highway, not given to some external party because we do not have money to manage highway, etc., etc. So a huge opportunities.
That's super exciting, and that's why our collective and holding companies have opened offices here, and we're planning to stay just because of the points that you have mentioned and the comprehensive legal legislation. Gary, tell me about TrueSight. How are you solving for credibility of sources and retail investment solicitation?
Yeah. So I would guess like, back during the pandemic, right? Suddenly like the population of retail investors just literally like skyrocketed. When you like look at Robinhood itself, right? That year, their like user base almost doubled to like 31 million users. And then like when you look at what's happening out there in the social network, you suddenly have this whole population of like trading gurus, right? follow my methodology and you get like 20% return, 30% return, 100x return. But hey, problem is like whatever they're saying, you can't really like see into their trading records, whatever, so and say, yeah, this guy is actually legit, right? So the way we figured, okay, I mean, it's like the core of your returns is basically like how accurate your prediction is. So that's how like the whole universal credibility protocol got created, right? It's like saying, okay, whatever your prediction about the future, just make a record on this blockchain. And then once it comes to maturity, our smart contract will automatically trigger and validate your prediction. So if you can like screw up your prediction, there's like no way to hide, right? It shows up. Or if you actually made a good prediction, there's actually no way to hide too, it shows up. So over time, your track record gets established on the blockchain. So the initial use case is mainly on like finance, which is like trading. But actually you can like even like extend this to like other areas like you know, sports betting and like even like say prediction of macroeconomic event, whatever like data feed that you can put on the chain itself in terms of an oracle, you can like literally use that protocol to establish credibility.
Great.
Yeah.
I have a question to all of you guys, and if you can make it just very brief, because I have so many more questions to ask you, and I think our audience would like to get your input on them. Srećko, I will start with you, if you can just make it brief. What are your convictions of where the future of DeFi needs to go?
Yeah. My personal beliefs are that DeFi, of course, with huge potential, mass adoption can achieve with existing classical financial institutions. Existing banks, with help of government and regulators, will adopt their businesses. And one part of adoption definitely will be to include DeFi like the added value in their businesses. And let's be honest, the user base currently is on bank's side, unfortunately, but that is the reality. Also, we must be aware that all this movement and revolution, if we all of us want to, that Bitcoin and Ethereum and crypto to be the mass adopted tomorrow. But to be honest, my personal beliefs are that that can be done only with common activities, governments and regulators and the crypto community together. It's not realistic that we can expect soon that currently 3.7, 3.8% of the population on Earth can be expanded to 20% in next 2, 3, 5 years without regulators, without the governments. And our role from the community must be to educate the government and regulators to conclude all benefits regarding the blockchain and potential. So this is the together fight for the better future.
Thank you. Vit?
I'd just like to note, what I'm advocating in terms of regulation isn't that special with Liberland. Czech Republic also basically doesn't regulate and doesn't recognize cryptocurrencies, and I think that's the best approach you can have to the segment, because then you let it flourish. But regarding DeFi, I truly believe we're coming to an age that not just central banks, but also traditional banks are going to be replaced. And not just banks, but also insurance companies. And it all comes down to sound economic models for these institutions to be instituted as DAOs, with sound DeFi system behind it. So what we're trying to do now with Liberland is to basically build system, we're building, by the way, on Polkadot substrate, just the technology itself. And we're trying to really make the incentives right so that the validators are voters and the Congress and the congressmen are also giving something back to voters. So it's a complex ecosystem where it's really difficult to put the alignments in line, but I believe actually whatever we do is going to simply be better than the existing states, no matter how how easy or difficult we're going to make it. But we're at this process when we're trying to take the best out of DeFi world and apply it on the nation-state government.
Thank you, Vit. Gary?
So I'm going to kind of like deviate a little from that like question. I'm actually like going to borrow a little from anyone actually like does like sailing, like international maritime stuff. It's like if you have a boat and you actually go 3 miles offshore, you're no longer within the sovereign territory of the country. You're literally in international waters, right? And whatever happens in international water is like basically governed by international like maritime agreement. Now, let's jump over to the current like financial system we have, right? Ever since like 1970s, we have like this agreement where like US actually becomes like the international reserve currency. So drawing from the original analogy, you have like the US dollar becoming like the section of the financial world, which is like the international waters. Doesn't actually make sense, right? And it's been unraveling over the past 50 years. Right now, what you're seeing is that the status of the international, like US dollar as the international reserve being challenged every time there's like a financial crisis. And what I observed when I was like going around the world for the past 4 years, literally like on foot, was that some sections of the world already started moving away from like that US dollar as the international reserve currency, especially like those countries that's part of like the Belt and Road Initiative. It's almost like when China comes up, right? They're kind of trying to impose their dominance and trying to kind of go after that international reserve currency status. So you kind of like have like these two big ecosystems like happening right now. But here's the funny thing. The oil states, Dubai, for example, and Saudi Arabia, and like much of Africa, they are kind of like sitting on the fence. It's like, do I kind of like stick to the old system? Do I go to the new system? Not sure. And as a result, what you're seeing is, well, a lot of them kind of like defaulting to this no man's land zone, right, which is DeFi, right? And like, there's actually a lot of adoption of like crypto in this region, right? So it's like, look at El Salvador, for example. It's like, Bitcoin is now legal tender. So my hunch, my bet is, yes, China's economy is going to come up. China is probably going to have like very strong currency in the future. US still probably like have a strong currency, but in the future, right, all the international transactions will be happening via like this DeFi ecosystem. And a lot of it is starting to play out, right? If you look at, say, the recent war between Russia and Ukraine, instead of like defaulting to the usual like international way of like accepting donations, for example, like, hey, Ukraine, like say, hey, donate to us, right? Send us Ethereum, send us Bitcoin. Literally, you're like indirectly endorsing that, yes, we accept this as a legal tender. Yeah. So that's my take on it.
Thank you, Gary. Jonas?
DeFi is here to stay. I think no one will say the opposite. I think the success of it will depend on our users of this platform. Will they feel safe in the future to keep on interacting with dApps, with smart contract, with decentralized platform and decentralized financing tools? And that is the big question. I don't know how many of you still feel very comfortable investing after the Luna debacle, for example. And I think that will be the challenge that the industry has to solve. The platform and the tools and the developers will stay, but users need to keep on coming to this platform. And this will not happen until they feel safe and they feel that they can trust third-party people with their money. So there is still a lot of efforts to do to convince people that DeFi is a safe way to invest into develop application on that perspective.
Thank you, Jonas. So I'm going to tie a couple of questions into one. It all relates to the notion of radical transparency. And I'm going to lead with the fact that, Gary, you're working on credibility before the fact, and Jonas, you're working on credibility during and after the fact. So due diligence and compliance in the Web 3.0 space is something that we need to pay attention to and communicate the truth to retail investors. How do we do that efficiently and without falling in the trap of marketing gurus? I have been contemplating for a very long time about radical transparency. What is your stance on radical transparency, and what are you doing as pioneers in that regard that is worth of mentioning? Vit, I would like to start with you.
Okay, well, what we're doing is radical transparency for nation-state government. So we're putting all the processes that you can think of, starting from the voting, but of course budgeting, but also justice system, everything on one single transparent blockchain platform. We're of course not putting the personal data on there, but you will literally be able to see the whole country as an ecosystem online. And I truly believe actually that nation-state governance is the ultimate use case for the blockchain transparency, which we really need. You know, it's crazy, but so many countries don't even show you a budget, like a living one, and then there are so many things happening, but we should, I think that's what will bring a lot of people together once we've launched this platform. It's not just going to be like, you know, like a yearly statement on budget, but it's going to be a online, every second you exactly know what the members of Congress are doing and how your money is spent. And you will also be able to decide where your taxpayers' money will be spent if you pay taxes in Liberland. And not just that, by the way, you also get the shares of the country which you're paying the taxes to, which I think is a long overdue concept that we would like to put in place.
Jonas?
I think radical transparency is a fantastic idea, but the problem is we only have 24 hours in a day. How do you go through all this mass of information that is available there? I think, you know, what you mentioned is a fantastic option to have everything out there, but I don't have time to go and look at what my government is doing, what this project is doing in details and verifying, and I think that's the issue. So information is fantastic, but for it to be useful, it has to be organized, analyzed, and, you know, presented in a way that makes the job of the readers easier. Otherwise, we will get, you know, we're drawn in a sea of information that will not help the whole picture here.
Definitely. Srećko?
Yep. Regarding the transparency,
Regarding radical transparency.
yes, right. I think that actually people and institutions in the future have to choose in depends of what transaction on blockchain is, should be transparent or not. For example, my health record and information tomorrow will be stored on the blockchain. I don't like to everybody in the community see my datas, even financials, but that transparency should be open to the government because I am here paying the taxes. So I believe in some kind of mix mode, an opportunity to choose in depends of the transaction type where to store the data.
Valid point. Gary?
So I would say there's actually like two parts to it, right? In terms of like the challenges of like society for actually accepting radical transparency, right? One part, like when you're like thinking of like radical transparency in terms of your decision-making process, you know, it's like kind of like, wow, what kind of like plans you kind of like bake into the organization. Literally like every single decision you made is now like open for scrutiny. So from an individual perspective, right, it's like, oh fuck, man, I probably like wouldn't feel very secure, like because I'm being judged all the time, right? So it's almost like requiring you to have like a mindset shift. Say, hey, I'm gonna make this decision. I have like no future, no idea about what the future is, but Hail Mary, let's just jump, right, and kind of like accept it for what it is. Be open to be open to like failing if you kind of like make the wrong decision. That is like a mindset shift, right? So yeah, we have to kind of like start propagating that through the whole like society. If we could do that, that's great, right? But who knows? And then like from the other perspective, right? Any of you like remember like the Richard Nixon like Watergate like incident? Like Richard Nixon was like trying to promote like radical transparency within his government. So every single tape, right, was kind of like all recorded. And here's like one of the challenges I foresee with radical transparency that the CEO of Google recently like brought up, which is that you can be totally transparent, but it's not only the transparency part that's important, right? The context is very important as well. Otherwise, what you end up having is like a whole slush of like data with like no way to like really pull it together or piece it together and just like really understand it. And then like you kind of go into like this pile of data and like pull out a whole bunch of stuff. It's like everything's kind of like misquoted out of context. Then it's like, well, we have like radical transparency, but like the whole context is off, right? Then isn't that like like very different from like disinformation and misinformation? It's almost like when I think of it in terms of like the traditional Taoism model, everything like brought to its extreme becomes its opposite, right? Yes, you want to promote radical transparency, but well, brought to its extreme, like the whole context is lost, and it's like there's no way to know the context, and it just becomes a total confusion. So I would say we have to kind of like, if we kind of like as a society is like going in that direction, then it's not just like about the transparency, it's about the context, right? It's like how to like modulate the system and kind of like self-balance it all the way. I wouldn't even say like we can like get there in one shot, kind of like, boom, you're done. It's almost like a constant process of like self-rebalancing and self-calibration. That's how I would see like the future to be.
Thank you, Gary.
Guys. We're going to have to wrap this up for final thoughts, please.
Yeah, one last question, Jonas. If you can just give a 20-second answer, how investors to invest in the right projects, what they need to look at, and second, how entrepreneurs to appeal correctly to investors.
I think the first point is trust but verify. So before you invest, verify everything you're being told. This is the best advice I could give. And then for the investors, you have to be upfront. If you're trying to raise money from an investor from a project perspective, be upfront about everything. And I think radical transparency is where this can come in play.
Thank you very much, guys. If anyone has a quick question from the audience, you guys have a couple of minutes. Please go ahead, sir.
Actually, if anyone has any questions, sorry guys, because of time and production, and we have to do something here on stage, these gentlemen will be very, very kind enough, and they will be here to answer any of your questions. So I just want to thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.